step back again and talk about the plans.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's how it starts. Just a thumb suck sketch, and then obviously your profile will be cut out of EPP. That's the profile for the Hurricane. That was a plane that I requested. We never had a Hurricane before. That would be a cool one to add to the cable. So that's how it starts. Just for those who don't know, the profile will be cut out of that, and then the real first challenge with these things is then carving the fuselage. Because now you've got to get a scale-looking profile and proportion and shape out of a block of foam. So that's a whole different thing. So even before you get to the finish, you know. So that one over there, that's pre-covering, that's almost ready for covering. Okay? So this has also been carved out of a block of foam. And if there's one massive secret that I can divulge in terms of, well, any kind of scale building, and it applies to these as well, the biggest secret of all is reference material. Because you want to create a realistic foamy and capture the essence of the full size, but now if you don't know the full size intimately and you haven't studied the drawings and pictures of the full size and how it looked in service, I mean, you don't know. So that's the first step, is reference material. And I mean, nowadays, I mean, especially with the internet, I feel ancient when I speak about in my day. It was library and books and that type of thing, you know. So, you know, these types of publications for me is totally invaluable when you're building any kind of scale plane. So you need to study the plane, understand what the full size looks like, and in terms of the weathering as well. When they were in service, certain planes would weather in a certain way, and there's always a story behind it. It's never just weathering for the sake of weathering. Like for instance, the Japanese fighters, I don't have an example of that. The paint flaked off in massive chunks of the Jap fighters during the Second World War, and there was a reason for that. So their weathering is different to other Allied type planes. And the reason for that was the green paint during the war that they used to camo the planes was in very short supply in Japan. And they thinned the existing stocks down substantially to make it stretch further. But that compromised the adhesion of the paint onto the metal. And that paint would just come off in massive chunks, in big flakes, which looks very weird when you see it. It looks totally red. But that is the reason why the adhesion was compromised. But what I'm saying, that's the background to it. So you've got to, it's good to take the time to gain a bit of insight into that. You know? And then another thing I'd like to just mention on that's called invasion stripes, which we're all very familiar with on the Allied planes, the black and white zebra stripes on the wings and the fuselages. Modelers get that wrong every single time. In that we'll make perfect, neat, sharp, crisp, black and white stripes. Yeah, that's how you do it. Like if you do it on a Warbird, you're going to cut out a vinyl, and it's perfect black and white stripes. It's actually very wrong historically. It never looked like that in service. And I've seen many pictures of them daubing on white paint over camo with freaking brooms and mops. Now that was like the night before, the invasion is the next day. They've just announced D-Day is on. The invasion is next. The directive goes out, and there's thousands of planes that needs black and white stripes on them. You're going to sit there, hold that long, neatly masking off, and make sure you mask off around the existing registration numbers on the side of the plane. There's no time for that. You know, the invasion is on. We've got to go tomorrow. There's 50 planes in the squadron that needs black and white stripes. And now freehand, I'll just do it freehand. Some will chalk maybe the lines on by hand. Another will come with a big paintbrush, and you just coil it like that, half over the registration, over the rundle. It was very rough. So I'm just saying, you know, that's the background to in terms of understanding how the plane actually looked in service. And you've got to have a little bit of understanding of that to create a realistic looking model. Not that we're trying to win a Top Gun competition with half the scale, but you've got to understand the background behind it and why it weathered the way it did and why it looked the way it did. Anyway, enough of that preamble. So I like to use this type of publication. You see this type of thing, which is absolutely beautiful. I refer to this quite a lot, these types of publications. Yeah. So obviously we're going to draw panel lines on your plane as well. Let's get to that.
Sorry, Damian, can I add something over there?
Yeah.
One thing that's always sort of amazed me about the look that you've achieved is that the fuselages are not scale in size, in length particularly.
Yeah.
They've all got shortened tail sections.
Lengthened noses.
But because of your finessing which is something like, there's no ways I can get that right. So with your finessing, we have that slightly shorter tail to help with CG and stuff like that, and yet you don't actually really notice it on these designs, which is always, I think, a fantastic
Well, that's
thing.
the sort of art behind these things,
Yes.
you know. So if you compare this to a 3-view, if I'm going to show you a 3-view of a P-47 Thunderbolt, and you're going to look at it with a critical eye, you're going to cheapest creepers, but this thing, like, it's lengthened, it's slimmed down, the nose is a hell of a lot longer than the scale, but that's fine. But still, if you look at it like this, and once it's finished, it will still kind of capture the essence of the full size. So that's just in terms of the design and finessing the proportions of the model.
Which is not easy.
Which is, I must admit,
it's akin to a cartoon artist that can capture the essence of something without.
That's a very good analogy. Correct.
And so,
creating a caricature of the real thing.
And the character sits in the canopy and certain, like the tail shape, the arc of the tail, and certain aspects that you just capture correctly.
So to begin with, that's where I suppose the art lies as well. It's not that easy actually to do if you don't know how to approach it, you know. But anyway, that's not really the main topic of conversation.
Kevin, my question is why? Why is the reason why you haven't gone for scale? Is there like a technical reason why you haven't done that?
Very good question. So most of these Warbirds, I can use the Thunderbolt as the example. The full size had a very stubby nose because of that massive radial engine in the front of the full size. So a scale Thunderbolt with scale proportions as a model, you're going to need a ton of lead in that nose to balance that thing.
Gotcha.
So then you're going to end up with a slightly heavy plane. So that's the main reason for the nose being elongated. So you don't need that much weight to give you more of a moment arm for balancing.
Gotcha.
And then also the initial concept behind these things was for contact combat. So you almost want bee-like response, snappy response, which you're not really going to get out of scaling up a 3-view drawing. It will fly fine, but you're not going to be able to whip around with it. I want
to respond with a small tail.
That type of thing.
Now we have a bigger tail to fly.
So that's the main reason for it, yeah. So it's a case of getting the performance as a slopey from the piloting point of view, and then once again still capturing the essence of the full size, but without it being a scaled up 3-view necessarily.
Okay, nice.
There's no reason why you couldn't do that. It will probably fly just fine. We've seen with the PSS Warbirds, the more scale-like ones, although they're much bigger, they actually fly actually quite nicely on the slope. You know, they actually fly and handle quite nicely.
But they have got a ton of lead in the nose, and they do
Correct.
fly more.
And you're not going to whip it around like a rubber ball bouncing around the sky. And I like to do that also. So hence that is design. So that's sort of how it starts. Basically, that's how it starts, and then that's sort of your next step. Same with the wing panels, the standard foam EPP foam wing panels, and then this is pre-covering, finish carving, all that type of thing, pre-covering. We found that Codex tail surface is by far the best material for tail surfaces. You could use balsa surfaces.
But how do you get
as
it
well.
from that to that? I mean, do you use like
The carving? That's a whole nother story entirely. Actually, I want to get into that.
Joe, it's actually really easy. Just give it to him to do.
I can't believe I'm not sick of these bloody things. But anyway, I can't escape it. So anyway, so that's how it starts, then it goes there, then you sort of get to that stage, and then that's one covered without detail on it. And then obviously that one is sort of totally finished with some detail on it. So let's get to that. So in terms of adding detail, the most obvious thing for me with these things is the canopies. I've said this a million times. I've discovered that to give it a real convincing sort of scale impression, I spend a lot of time on getting the canopy shapes and proportions just right. Make sure the canopy frame is just the right thickness. I just find if you get that right, then all of a sudden the plane starts to look scaled. That's how I see it anyway. So it takes it pays to spend a bit of time getting the canopy just right, as scaled as you can make it in terms of its shape and its proportion. And then the plane starts looking scaled. Because in my eye, that's the main player with these aircraft, because that's where the pilots at. You know what I mean? So that's the main area, actually. That's the pilot's office. So you've got to get the office just right. So I do spend a lot of time getting the canopy shapes just right. And then what I normally do is I'll draw on it, just to check the profiles. I'll see, oh shit, it's still a bit fat there. That line is a bit bulged. Okay, must be sanded down there. And then, okay, now I'm not sure what I'm looking at. Some white on, draw on it again, check that line. That's how I sort of do the canopies. So you draw on the foam with a white pen to check your profiles, your cross sections that you're trying to carve down to. So anyway, so that's that, and then you end up with a blank canvas, right? That can be detailed, and there's various ways. So depending on your base color, there's different techniques depending on whether it's a light color, whether it's a camo color, whether it's one uniform dark color, as in this case. You've got to consider that in terms of the method you're going to use to dress the plane with panel lines to begin with. So in the case of Steve's plane, this being a dark blue top surface, so if you use black cokie on here for your panel lines, it's actually not going to show up that nicely because it's a dark color on a dark color. And then herein comes the tricks. Now I'm going to try and demonstrate this in terms of the panel lines. It's a bit difficult to demo that without having a big board or something to draw on. To show you the effect. So essentially with these scale effects, panel lines and that sort of thing, you're playing with light and shadow. That's what you're actually doing. And you're going to create a kind of an illusion. So with panel lines, if you just drew a panel line onto a surface like this, it's just a black line on a surface. It's got no depth to it, you know. So if you want to add depth to it, let me see if I can, that's another trick I like to use. I use it on bigger scale power planes as well, without actually scribing a panel line into the surface. But then if you give it a 3D effect, suddenly that panel line comes to life. It's not then just a line drawn on the surface. And there's a trick to that. And it's basically in terms of, I like to use the terminology, you're playing with light and shadow, and you've got to understand that, and then it's very easy to achieve the effects when you understand how light and shadow works. That when light falls on an object, you're going to have a highlighted area and you're going to have a shadow area, right? That's how light and shadow works. And that's what creates the 3D effect. So for instance, if you look at this gap here between this table, that's maybe a good illustration. So on the full-size planes, it was metal panels riveted to a frame, right? And these metal panels had gaps between them, slight gaps between them, okay? So if you imagine that these two tables are two metal panels, and that's the join line there of the panel, right? So imagine a light source coming from that side. So on this side of the line, this side here, is going to be a shaded dark area. That edge of the panel there is going to be a highlighted area. Right? That's how light and shadow works. And if you want to create a 3D panel line, that's in effect what you're going to do. So you will rule onto this. I would rule a black line, and then I would imagine a light source, and on the one side of that line, I will then draw with a silver pen or a white pen, I will draw another line next to it. And the instant you do that, it would look like a 3D line. And I've actually had people on some planes, come over and they would literally do this, and then when they don't feel the reach, they're completely confused, because they're 100% sure it's going to feel like that. You can feel the indentation. And they run their hands over it, and they're like, what the hell, what did you do? How did you create this line? Like, did you, because nothing there. It's perfectly smooth, but it looks like a 3D indentation. So you're playing with light and shadow. And another good example of that is to simulate the fabric surfaces on the rudder, for instance.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah.
And that's a very simple effect to achieve, just as a light and shadow effect. And all it basically is, it's very simple once you see how it's done. So you can either use a piece of paper, and I like to use I make things like this. I make this out of insulation tape. I'll stick two pieces of insulation tape on top of each other, and I'll cut strips. And this is my ruler. So if I'm going to make a panel line across this plane, for instance, I'll stick that tape on there like that, right? Just let go, it creates a nice edge, and then you can make your line using the insulation tape as a guide. And what is nice about this is, well, you can do nice curved lines, beautiful curved lines with it as well.
So just say again, you stuck two pieces of
insulation.
I use insulation tape. The East Products, Tamiya makes a very good vinyl tape. It's bloody expensive stuff. You just buy normal insulation tape.
Wow, you got 2 layers, or what was it, 2 layers for it?
Because now you want to create a raised edge that you can rule against.
It's too thick.
So a thin piece of tape is too thin to act as
Okay. Just to make it thicker. Okay.
So you put two on top of each other and then cut it
Correct.
down.
As opposed to using fine line tape.
Yeah.
Fine line tape's expensive.
That's expensive stuff. Ordinary freaking insulation works like a charm. I've been using it for years and years. So you can make all kinds of curves with it if you need. You need to go around the fuselage, you know, it works like a charm, sticks like that. And then you can make your line. I want to start just drawing willy-nilly on you, because I see you didn't bring, I forgot to ask you to bring a nice 3D. So we could start with maybe like engine cowl lines and draw a couple of lines. So I'm not going to just make any lines on here. I hope what I'm saying makes sense to you guys. So
5 liters of acetone at home.
And rub off all my freaking hard work for me. Yeah. No, I'm not going to do that. So you see now, if you want to draw a panel line around there, that's how you do it with the insulation tape. Nice edge, just go around all the way around, beautiful line.
So let's say you start with a black line.
Yes.
Take that tape off and then move it slightly and then put a white line.
Correct.
Oh really?
So,
Okay.
oh wow. Yeah. So the only slight, what's the word, problem with that is you're in effect now drawing the same line twice. Because you're drawing the shadow area, which is the black, and you're going to do the highlighted area in your white or silver pen, and then make it look 3D. That's the idea behind it. You don't have to do it.
And you know the next question is, so do you put all the white lines on the left side?
That's a
On
very
the left
good
and the right
question.
wing, or do you do it left side for the
Brilliant
left wing
question.
and the right side
Brilliant
for the right
question.
wing?
So what you've got to do, you've got to imagine the light source at all times. So you're going to draw panel lines and you want to give it a 3D look, right? So the black line and the white line is always got to be on the correct side throughout the whole model, because you're imagining a uniform light source. So for argument's sake, to draw a line around there, let's say you imagine a light source from an oblique angle onto the model, right? So you're going to draw your black line, and then your highlight white area is going to be on that side of the white of the tape, of the black line, because your light source is coming from here. And then you imagine that with every panel line you draw. You just got to imagine where the light source is coming from to understand which side you're going to put your highlight line on. It's got to be on the correct side to give the correct look. So for instance, you can't do the line there, put the white highlight on that side, and then you do the engine cowl lines and the white highlight is sort of on the other side. And most people won't even know the difference, but still, it's, you know, there's a correct way and a wrong way to do it, you know. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys.
Yeah.
No.
So how easy is it to take the tape off up to the black line and then leave a little gap?
Yeah, that's not too difficult to do.
Not too
Because then your black line is your guide, and you've got a perfect guide, you know.
Do they touch?
Yes, yes. So I think these drawings illustrate that effect nicely. To illustrate what I'm talking about, I don't know if you guys want to just get here and have a look at that. The imaginary light source is coming from the top of the plane. Will be on that side of the black line, because this is your light source. And then that applies to all of these markings. You can look at this door here as well, and you'll see the black outline and then the white highlight, right? And that you can achieve if you have grey and green paint on your model. Then a pencil crayon creates that effect, a white pencil crayon creates that effect. You see that there's a black line and then pencil. So here's another little trick for weathering again. So if you want a weathered panel line, that's just a soft HB pencil. I find works the best thing for panel lines. The only thing with this particular method, it presupposes a matte finish. It obviously won't work on a gloss finish, this method. So then if you want to achieve this method and it's on glossy film, you can either scuff the film with some fine sandpaper to create a matted surface onto which this will key, or you can give it a coat of clear, matte, clear coat of any whatever type. And then when you draw the line in pencil, what is nice, if you just, that effect was just created just by smudging the line. So you draw the line, you just do that, and it creates that effect. And if you guys can see that, then you create a weathered panel line. It's a very realistic effect, yeah.
So on this panel, do you deliberately make the shadow effect just on the one side of the line and keep the panel?
It depends on the effect you
Because
can't
that can
do.
make it seem like it stands above.
There's a lot of ways you can play with them. So if you want to create the impression of a panel line, a panel that's standing proud of the surface, then obviously if that's the surface, and there's a panel on that surface, right? It's going to be in shadow. That's going to be in shadow. You won't add an highlight there because it's a panel line standing proud. It's not a groove. So then you'll just mask that off. You'll mask that off like that with a piece of tape, and then you just rub with pencil, and that creates the shadow effect, same as on that Spitfire tail. Then you just do it on the one side. And then it will look like that panel standing proud. You're playing with light and shadow. That's the principle behind it. So to achieve those effects, you've got to understand how light and shadow works. You've always got to imagine a light source.
Where the light's coming from.
You've always got to imagine a light source.
Where the shadow is going.
Where the shadow will be cast and where the highlight will be created.
Described it very nicely on the table there.
Yeah. So on that rudder, to create the scallop look, to give the impression of a fabric covered rudder and stabilize. So that just, I'll just take a piece of tape, very like that, rule that in pencil, and then literally just smear it with my hand like that. It creates that shadow. And then that's the effect of the simple. Bled under the tape. So when I cut the tape also, then I'll cut the tape at an angle to create like that kind of edge, just to give it a bit of clearance so it doesn't bleed. Let's see if that works here. So let's just say we're going to draw a line along there. So you just go like that, although on this dark color the black line should be more prominent, should be thicker, just to emphasize it a little bit. Let's just see what we get. Yes, I need my glasses here. Oh, well, it doesn't show up too badly. It shows up. So that will be a basic black line. And then to give it a 3D effect, I'm not going to bother with weathering now. I'm just going to do that just for the 3D effect. And then you've got to go next door to it, close as you can. So there you've got your line. Now you've got, now which side is the white highlight going to go on to?
Light coming from.
So if the light's coming from that side,
It's going to be on.
the highlight's going to be on this side of the black line. So you always got to just think of it like that, and you will never get it wrong.
And I mean, you're doing sort of like a pen width behind that, your pen width, whether it be like a half a mil behind it kind of thing.
So generally your black line will be prominent.
Yeah.
Will be quite a thickish, heavy line, and then your white highlight will be a thinner highlight.
Okay.
That's actually a good point there as well. I didn't think about that one. And then you just go next door to actually the rulers, what was needed. Yeah, not this. This is for like compound curves, not for straight lines. But anyway, you stick it next door. I can barely see that black line. I'm probably going to draw the white highlight straight over the white and drop it up. Let's just see. Let's see what we get. So that's a silver pen. I wonder if we can try silver, and that's white. We'll just try the white.
Yeah, but Damian, just on it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, like it, jeez.
I know, I can see it.
Oh. I thought I'd
Now, get the
stage.
bifocals out now.
Yeah.
Bring your glasses.
Yeah, I'm at that stage. I'm there. So that's the white pen. I've never tried this before. Oh shit, check it out. Close to that black line.
No, but it's about a mile away, so you reckon it's too far away?
No, there mustn't be any cap. It must be directly adjacent.
Oh.
There mustn't be a cap that won't create the right effect. It's a bit difficult now because this line is slightly wavy.
So it must be over there. You're going to do this one then over the black line, over the thicker black line.
Just touching.
Just touching, adjacent to.
Yeah.
So no cap. You don't want a cap between the two because that won't create the correct effect. There's a bit of stuff up. I needed a ruler to do this. Let's just see what we get here, Steve. Oh, okay, it's not too bad. Never used this kind of pen before. Yeah, it doesn't really like, it's almost like a ballpoint pen, which is not really the ideal, but anyway, hopefully it's good enough just for illustrative purposes. You needn't be too precise here as well because
I can see it.
yeah, okay, that's overpowering the black. You see the black line's too thin and the white is too prominent.
Okay, so a bit thicker black.
That's part of the effect to break it up a little bit, and it creates a sort of a part of the illusion is that you
could do that as well.
solid.
Yeah. So the black line needs to be thicker for this. You need quite a thick, heavy black line.
But you think on the grey, maybe not so much.
And then not so much on the grey.
Yeah.
So let's just try the grey and you can see the contrast.
But from my understanding, that line now looks very nice.
Yeah, not quite the effect because that looks like a white line drawn on the blue.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like a highlight. Well, not to my eye anyway. Right?
Damian, what's thicker pens, eh? I think
So
I've got a one, that's a 0.4, and there's a 1 mil.
Just check there, Dave. We
There's
just
a-
check this
there's a-
pattern.
But your bag of cookies is
I'll try that on my cookies already. So what, I need to try something else here, Steve, on that scroll. Light source. Is that drawn a line? I can't see the white line there. Ah, yes, it is. So there's a more subtle effect, you see that? And now you're starting to get the 3D feel.
Yeah. I see
Right.
that. Yeah, that looks cool. Yeah, okay.
So there you're starting to get, but now on the dark color, this white ink is too